In the observable universe, there are 400 billion galaxies. Anyone claiming to know enough about this profusion to infer a plan from it had better be very well informed, and I congratulate anyone who tries. When I say observable, I mean something else that's also contingent. Edwin Hubble a few decades ago made the discovery those galaxies are moving away from each other at a very rapid rate that leaves red light behind it. I don't think anyone any longer denies it. Most scientists thought, operating on usual gravitational principles, that that rate would have to slow down by now. They'd be expanding, yes, but the rate would be slowing. No, it's not. It's expanding. The rate is going up. It's getting faster. It's getting close to doubling. That's only 10 years ago we found that out. That means that galaxies are going to be pulled apart faster than light and going to cause them to drop out of view. That means that the reference points for measuring expansion will go, and we'll dilute everything we found out about the Big Bang to nothingness. In fact, to put it as the great physicist Lawrence Krauss has put it, it will erase all the signs that the Big Bang ever occurred. In other words, those who say to you, how is there something instead of nothing, have got to explain to you how well designed it is, how predetermined it is, that very soon, in physical time, there will be a great deal of nothingness where once there was something. And that this is part of the plan. That the plan is for nothingness. And in local news, more local news, the Andromeda Galaxy is headed our way directly, collision course, much more local news, just our little suburb of the universe. And it will hit us in 5 billion years, which is to say, in real time, tomorrow. In real time, that's very soon. And that's part of the design. Whose design? What kind of designer? What kind of caprice? What kind of incompetence? What kind of cruelty? What kind of nihilism? What kind of commitment to nothingness? And in the meantime, in the little suburb where we dwell, every other rock in our solar system is inhospitable to life as being too hot or too cold, as is large tract too hot, too cold of our own planet, which is on a climatic and ecological knife edge, as we have good and better and more recent reason to know, and that it is as likely that we'll be able to get out of the way of this and move elsewhere in response to the climate crisis as it is in response to the Andromeda crisis, and that those who try and teach you differently are asking you not to use your intellectual or analytical capacities at all, but to do something very old, very backward, like the Aztecs, like the pre-Galileo, stupefied human beings who didn't know the microorganisms were there, who didn't know about the Big Bang, who didn't know about the red light, and simply to place everything you have on a leap of faith. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, don't do it. You know better. Everybody now knows better. Thank you. Can it be argued that something that's on a knife edge for life, it could go either way, that keeping us on the knife edge proves there must be a designer at work? Why would a designer keep us on a knife edge where at any moment our planet might tip to be where the other planets he made were? Dead, lifeless, where nothing happens. The knife edge proves a designer? It proves nothing of the kind. And if it wasn't life, it would be death that they'd use for their argument from design. Professor Francis Collins, the man who helped us sequence the Human Genome Project, says that he went for a hike one day in the wilderness. We've all been impressed by nature in our day, as we have by music and by sex and by love and by many other things, to feel that there's a transcendent. But Professor Collins goes and he sees a frozen glacier with the 3 streams of river frozen in a trinity. Nothing can live up there. It's a lifeless thing. And it happens to be a metaphor for Christianity. He falls to his knees and accepts Jesus as he sees this, and he expects us to think that that's an argument and that that's evidence. Well, as I say, scientists or people who claim to be interested in science can believe weird and foolish things. Just be aware that that's the deal you're being offered today. Thanks.
If it's so incredibly clear to you that the religion is a hoax and a fraud, why are so many people in America deeply religious? Are they just stupider than you?
Well, again, I'll take your question in reverse order, if I may. Yes, I think I am smarter than most people in the United States. And the polls find that most people agree with that proposition. It was our first try at cognition. It was our first try at epistemology. It was our first try at philosophy. It was in some ways our first try at mathematics. It's what we came up with because we are pattern-seeking and ambitious and freedom-seeking mammals when we didn't know we lived on a round or spherical planet. We didn't know that we were in circulation around other heavenly bodies. We didn't know about gravity. We didn't know there were microorganisms stronger than ourselves that explained a lot. We didn't know why the heavens darkened and rained or hailed. We didn't know why there were earthquakes or floods. It was the first tremulous attempt to make sense. And in the work of Aquinas and Augustine and elsewhere, we see the first glimmerings of our attempts at philosophy. And in the Cranmer prayer book and the King James version of the Bible that happen to be my favourites, and the English hymnal, we also have the beginnings of a literature. The first time everyone who could read had all read one book and had a common discourse. So it's, for me, a very, very important and honourable, and at its best even a noble subject. But of course it is man-made and a delusion. And it is used by wicked people to exploit the credulousness of innocent people to create not an eternal life or a life of freedom in another world, but a real, actual, material, secular dictatorship now claimed by people who have the arrogance to say that they themselves are acting in the name of God. And that's why it has to be opposed. Punishment of the dead. You may die a horrible death of ethnic cleansing ordered by God, and massacre even of your children, and confiscation of all your possessions, mandated by God. But he's done with you when the grave closes over you. There's no punishment of the dead. Gentle Jesus, meek and mild, proposed by the New Testament types as a less forbidding figure than the Old Testament. God says, depart from me, if you don't agree, into everlasting fire. So the filthy concept of hell that's been used to terrorize children and lie to people by cynical priests and rabbis and imams for years, less so the rabbis, comes from Gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Which book are these people quoting from? Which bit of it? Why do they think it isn't man-made when it so self-evidently is? We don't have any supernatural authority, ladies and gentlemen, in literary criticism. We're left alone with our day, and the time is short, and history to the defeated may say alas, but cannot help or pardon. And the reference upward to the supernatural authority is an abdication of our most precious faculty, our own responsibility. And we cannot abdicate that, and religion asks us to do so.
There's a...
yes, I speak with feeling.
So, but there's a...
do not regard myself as particularly redeemed or marked in my foreskin for a special a revelation or salvation, and I despise anyone who thinks like that. I don't think people should think with their dicks or their epidermis or their pudenda. Okay? Call me old-fashioned if you like.
Christopher, do you think that there are tens of thousands, if not, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of thousands of men and women who work in faith in this country? Do you think they're all charlatans and frauds?
No, I don't. I mean, I've met many people who are more, I would consider morally superior to myself, not just in this country but in other countries too, who it's quite clear to me are doing what they do for their faith, which often is, for example, Mormonism, which I consider to be a racket, or Pentecostalism, which I consider to be a delusion, but they're doing it for that reason. However, all over the world and in the United States, I've met people who try and help others for its own sake, not to proselytize for their church, not to proselytize for their faith, not to argue that there are invisible means of support or later means of redemption, but because they are humanists and humanitarians. Gates it. So one of the things I live for is to return a stout and joyful non-serviam to this dictator, who I'm pleased to find doesn't really exist, but is instead a creation of those who want to install a theocracy in the real life where I can participate, and I'm not going to give them an inch. The second thing I live for is, if not exactly passing on my genes, taking part in activities that might allow those genes to be passed on. And not scorning the three delightful children who result, who are everything to me and who are my only chance of even a glimpse of a second life, let alone an immortal one. And I'll tell you something, if I was told to sacrifice them to prove my devotion to God, if I was told to do what all monotheists are told to do, and admire the man who said, yes, I'll gut my kid to show my love of God, I'd say, no, fuck you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
so should you, and the religions that say you should admire infanticide as proof of the love of God have no claim at all to be preaching ethics, let alone morality.